This tutorial movie is about the Reservoir Data Tab in Wellbore Simulator data preparation section. The appearance of the Reservoir Data Tab depends on which well operating scenario we're looking at. For a steam circulation and steam injection scenario, you would have a different number of columns. For a production well scenario using fixed reservoir influx or with variable reservoir influx, you would have a different number of columns. So let's take a look at the situation for steam circulation and steam injection. If I open up a data file for steam injection scenario and look at the Reservoir Data Tab, we will see a range of values, range of segments from 2, a reservoir temperature for the range, and a reservoir pressure for the range. So typically we would have a reservoir temperature for the entire range for both the riser section and the horizontal section of this well, and then in the sections of pipe where there is perforation or could be perforation, then we must also have the reservoir pressure. In case of pipe data, if you look at the pipe data, we can see that the pipe has perforation 69 to 108. So in that section of pipe, the reservoir pressure must be entered so that we can compute the pressure difference between the liner pressure and the reservoir pressure, and the flow can go either way, from liner into reservoir or from reservoir into liner. Similarly, for the steam circulation scenario, the same columns appear. For the case of a production well scenario, this is a case where we use a fixed reservoir influx. And if you look at the reservoir data for the fixed reservoir influx, we will see it's a different more columns from 2 segment range, a reservoir temperature, a reservoir pressure, and a reservoir oil rate, water rate, gas rate per segment. This is not for the total well, this is for each segment in the range that is specified. So for every segment in this range, it would produce 4 millicubes of oil in reservoir conditions, 10 millicubes of water reservoir conditions, no gas, no free gas, and with a fluid composition as given by initial composition table 1. Now these are reservoir oil rates and they're not surface rates, so reservoir conditions. And if we use this button here to calculate equivalent reservoir rates, we would see that it would calculate for us the equivalent reservoir rate of the surface oil rate for the equivalent reservoir rate, the gas rate, water rate, and the gas rate. And the total well rate from the number of segments open will be this rate, and that will be the surface water rate. And these columns are in green. They are computed by the program using the PVT properties and the reservoir rates. If you look at the case of a production well with variable reservoir influx, the columns would be pressure from 2 segment numbers, reservoir temperature, reservoir pressure, and now be the oil saturation, water saturation, gas saturation, and composition tables. And now we must have a number that is a fraction, and which can normally say is 0.8. This could be 0.2, 0, and 1. And then depending on the oil viscosity, water viscosity, and gas viscosity, you would use the straight line relative permeability curve, the viscosities, to compute a phase mobility, and the ratio of fluids we produce based on the phase mobility. This is the end of this tutorial.